Okay, Nick, one of my favorite things to do is to watch a film where you know nothing about the movie except the title. And you go in completely blind. And this is maybe even more so for me because as far as director Park Chan-wook goes, I've never seen any of his films. I've never seen any of the films of any of the main actors. I have no connection to it whatsoever. I saw the poster for this movie, and I saw the title, The Handmaiden. And this is not what I expected.
I've been begging him for months to do a critique of Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, but instead we're going to do
The Handmaiden. Kyle and Nick on Film. Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from Goethe Film Reviews.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and thanks for watching, thanks for liking and subscribing, and thanks for finding us on YouTube. You can contact the show on Twitter and Instagram. Check out the Patreon, so for great options and choices, then you get to pick the movies for us. Today we're going to talk about one that kind of was regarded almost, it could be Oscar bait, Oscar nominated, but kind of fell through the cracks and people kind of forgot about. It's Park Chan-wook's The Handmaiden.
Yes. When the daughter of a thief gets the opportunity to help a con man seduce and rob a Japanese heiress, she finds herself emotionally connecting with the target, and her plans suddenly take a change. If you have not seen the movie and you're at all interested in watching it, that plot synopsis is all I'm going to give you. I think you need to go in more blind, maybe not as blind as I was, but more blind than having us break down it, because we probably are going to get into some spoilery stuff talking about the movie today. There's just no way about it.
We're warning that this is the natural thing of,
yes.
Even if we talk about Fight Club, you're going to have to talk about the...
And this is one where, the twists and turns are best left secret. Enjoy the film, then come back and watch the show. We'll be here paused, and we'll come back and keep chatting about it. But The Handmaiden, my God.
What's his name? Chung-hoon, who did cinematography, really outdid himself with this. This is fascinating.
One of the best shot films. And I always say that a lot, but I can't pick a single flawed screenshot, if you will, from this movie.
This is wonderful cinematography, and I think what takes away from it, and simply why it wasn't even considered for best cinematography, is just the content of the movie, the plot, and everything.
Yeah.
Or the duration of it. It's a little bit long edited, but cinematography really outdid it. It's really good acting.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that Park, he's a little more of a horror. This is a horror film. He's a little more into horror than I think. He doesn't really do horror films, but there's a lot more horror components that you will see in his films that you will even see in a horror film. There's a lot of things hard to digest in his movies, and that's his staple.
Yeah, there's some Saw to this movie. There's some Gone Girl to this movie. There's a whole bunch of random movies that feel like they were melded together to make what this is. And yeah, I wouldn't say that it's classically a horror movie, but it's horrific.
Right.
At times.
And that's the staple of Park, and because even Old Boy won't be regarded like a horror movie, but there are something that's really hard to observe and to know what's going on with the movies, and that's why I think it kind of subtracted from being interesting even for nominations for Oscars, because there's a lot. I mean, you're talking about pornography to children in a movie, which is hard for the Oscar Academy to
let's celebrate that one.
But it's a rich tapestry shot film. They intentionally, when one scene of the stairwell, have candles. They're not lit, but they're so white, it illuminates the atmosphere.
That's true.
It's clever photography in this movie, and well situated. Even with a snake, and you're like, oh, it's a snake. Park loves to do psychological manipulations of characters, and this is one of them.
Yeah, there's a betrayal, backstab, continuous trifecta that seems to be happening in this movie, that you don't always know who you can trust, even if you're being narrated to by a person. You're not sure if you can even trust what they're narrating at you, because you know that somebody is going to hurt somebody else. I like that there's the structure of the film I was really impressed with. I like movies that have parts or chapters. It feels like you're in a book. It feels like you're in a story that's being, normally being read to you as you fall asleep, although this is maybe not the content I would want read to me as I fall asleep. But that idea of you're on a journey with the characters, and I think that's really special.
There is a reverse shot dark, that you will see actually in Portrait of Lady Fire. There was used in this movie of the female of Lady Hideko looking this way, and then the other person comes into view. That is lifted completely to Portrait Lady on Fire when they're in the ocean. But it was reversed. It's dark and they're going this way. In Portrait Lady on Fire, they goes this way.
Mm-hmm.
I intentionally think they lifted it from this movie because it's very shot. Almost I was like, oh my God, that is from that movie. It's another thing of cinema. I have to say, it's all shot cinematography. My God, if you watch this movie without sound or subtitles, you will understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like it could be a silent film.
Well, and especially because the content tends to lead itself to primal choices that are made by the characters, and people understand primal because we're all a little primal. So like there's like a level of watching this movie, you could get everything you probably would need to get from it watching it. You'd understand at least the general idea once it gets going. But the intricacies of the betrayals that are taking place and how each part kind of builds on the previous and allows you to jump back, view things from a different perspective, and how that layers into the movie. It's fascinating stuff. I don't know that I believe all of the stuff would take place in a movie. Like I don't know if I buy that these characters would not have a Wild Things moment where someone is going to betray somebody else. Like there's a certain level when you get to that part where
I agree.
You know, Lady Hideko and Seo-kyeong, where it's I don't know if I buy that they trust each other enough to do what they do as the film goes on.
No, as you watch it, you're like, are you going to do one more backstab?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're kind of waiting for that final moment. And I was watching the whole thing to the end going, it's gonna happen, right? It doesn't. And I think that's maybe my big crutch on the film is that I don't know if I'm fully convinced because of all the betrayals that there wasn't a final
genuine affection that musical score. There is a musical score in this movie, and surprisingly, it doesn't start until the 28-minute mark of this film, which is really weird. I put it down. This musical score doesn't start to the 28-minute of this movie, so you have a lot of building of the world. You have a lot of building of the characters. It takes a long time to do it, and then the action doesn't really start till the music gets going.
Yep.
And it's a right point to get the music going. I know there's a hesitation to get the music started, and it fits perfect with this movie.
Yeah, and the musician Young-wook who did Old Boy and Cliff Walkers, which came out this year, the music that I thought was interesting was that it actually put another score in my head. When I finished watching the movie, I was humming the score to The Imitation Game. The musical choices have a lot of very similar play with them, where there's like a calculating, magic to what's going on, because that film is very, very calculating, very mathematical. This film is more calculating about who can I trust, what can I do, how can I get out of this situation, how can I maneuver around. So there's a lot of like internal calculation. That's kind of the comparison I was making. And yeah, when it kind of starts up, it made you question, wait, well, has there been a score yet? And then it goes away for a while.
No, it does, right.
And then it came back near kind of I think part 3, or like right at the end of part 2, it comes back and you're like,
3 parts.
Oh, wait, there was a score again. Yeah, and it's like you kind of have to keep reminding yourself that there is music in this movie, but you're so focused on the fantastic cinematography and the soap opera-ishness of the betrayals that you want to see.
It's a little soap opera,
yeah.
right. So I'd like to point out before you go further, Chan-wook is actually going to do the cinematography for the Obi-Wan series. So that, I'm already adulated in anticipation of what's going to look like.
And he already did It 2017 and
Hotel Artemis,
Zombieland Double Tap. So like worked in the large scale world before,
but they're
all of those movies look gorgeous.
Whether
or not
rich.
You like them or not is different, but they look very richly put to film.
Hotel Artemis, I've had problems with it, but it looks fantastic. It looks very rich, and he doesn't mind going a little bit dark.
Yep.
And especially in this movie as well, too. And it's broken up to 3 parts. I would say the second part is the most hard to digest. The middle part of this movie, when you get the entanglement of what the hell is going on, you're like, oh my God.
Well, you spend a bulk of part 2 reliving scenes from part 1, but in a more grisly sense.
Yeah.
In that, I think just hard to get through for its content, but I also think that's kind of where the film stumbles a little bit too, because the length is noticeable in part 2.
It gets a little more mechanical.
I don't think it's noticeable in part 1 or 3, because 3 is pretty fast. It's like the last chunk of the movie, but 2 is where the length feels, it wears on you a little bit.
And plus the content, you're like, I don't want to sit here and participate with this. And as part of Park, he will really sit and make you absorb the uneasiness of content. So even when the torture scenes of the hands and everything, he'll patiently sit and let you hold that scene as long as possible, so you get that impulse of like, can we just stop?
Yeah.
No, we're going to continue with this.
It reminds me of films like Joker and Funny Games, where they they kind of confront you with the enjoyment level of the film, like how much you're actually being entertained by it, and then kind of making you feel bad that you're entertaining. And I think that I'm entertained by part one, and then part two is where they're like, yeah, you were having fun watching? Yeah? Well, here's this. And it kind of makes you go, oh, I feel bad again now. Like,
and director Park Chan-wook, Park Chan-wook definitely loves to hold the uneasiness parts of a film.
Yep.
And really almost hit you over the head with it and hold it, and to the point where like, can we move on? No, we're going to have this whole, I mean, you showed even the close-up of the drill going up and down, so you know that's the hand and everything. So he also knows when to do close-ups. It's hard to do, especially with a sweeping movie of this, where you do close-up of just a simple shot of a book, simple shot of tea being poured, simple shot of a bloody drill going up and down. So overall, you have large-scale structure of a movie, but he knows when to go intimate with it.
And same thing too with he knows when to show you the disgusting, and he also knows when it's better that you imagine it. You know, it's kind of like, you know, when what you don't see in a horror movie can sometimes be, you know, more terrifying than what you do see. And there's elements to, like the torture scene, like you mentioned, where we don't see the actual torture. We just see it through the eyes of how they're reacting to it or how they're doing this.
Right.
Where you're, you know, thinking about the movie now, having seen it, I think about the torture scenes having place. Like, I think about the fingers and everything like that. We didn't see any of it happen, but we're living in it. Yeah.
I heard it, yeah. And that's the other thing a good director knows about sound. And I would say sound editing. My God, why did he not get nominated for sound editing? Because it's very well used. Even the sounds of the rustling leaves, of the whole wind and everything, is really an ensemble great piece of filming.
Technically everything should have been at least in consideration when it came time to give out those awards. If you had a problem with the content, that's one thing, but there's a lot of content nebulous films that have gotten those technical awards, and it's surprising to me that this one just skirted by. I think in a post-Parasite world, this movie might have gotten more recognition.
Right. I think Parasite broke a lot of walls, that this will probably be more recognized. But it's hard when you're watching a film of a woman retelling pornography stories, and all the men are like, "Oh my God."
I mean that's kind of the oddest book club I've ever seen on film.
But it's such a movie, because when she's talking, it opens up the windows and you see the snow falling in the background. You know all about layering and everything. So, music fits perfect to when they go to the ocean. I'm going to bring up another point, but the music fits when they go to the ocean. All of a sudden, it's a weeping epic saga. Almost like all of a sudden when they realize their accolade that they really do love each other, and almost like two women love each other, all of a sudden the oceans open up and it's waves crashing and everything. And
his playing with tension as they try to change their tickets is really something too. It reminds me of the end of Argo, where they're like, are they gonna make it? Are they gonna be okay? Like, and there's that final bit of like extreme tension where you're coming in and it's like, this is not gonna go well, and nothing ever goes well. It's awful, and then you get that
almost moment, like the train in the train station at North by Northwest with Cary Grant tried to get a ticket. It's shot almost at the similar. A lot of use of water in this movie. So even like the library is underwater. They feed the baby. I don't know if it's like medicine, but the baby's crying, they give it water. So there's a lot of play of water, oceans, used in this movie effectively, but really well. It's not hit over the head, but it's another little feature in this movie.
Yes. And it makes that ocean scene all the more appropriate, I guess, because
even the boat's not going like this. The waves are, but the boat's kind of like, we're now stable.
When they cut to that big scene of the water, you see all like the kind of like rapids and waves. You're like, whoa, this thing should be toppling. We should have a Poseidon Adventure remake going on.
But now it's like their relationship is completely balanced and everything. So yes, it's effective filmmaking. And of course, you have to go to the woods to get to everything. Every time you go to the woods, it's going to be bad.
Yep. There's probably more wooded sex scenes in this movie than most Friday the 13th installments. But one thing I want to point out, too, I'm incredibly impressed by one aspect of this film that is not discussed very often, and that is that this film is an adaptation, very loose adaptation, of the novel Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. Yeah. So that book was written years ago. It's set in 19th century London, and it's very much a different, loose version of what this is. In fact, I like that they said inspired by the novel instead of based on the novel, because I like that a director like Park Chan-wook, who has a singular vision. We talk a lot about singular visions on this show.
Yeah.
Park Chan-wook can take this, read this book, and say, I've got a vision of how I would tell this kind of story. And we don't do that in America. In America, it had, like, if we base a film on something, it's got to be 100% right, or we're going to riot, and we're going to, like, lift up our signs, and we're going to make sure everybody knows it. This movie being based on that and being so loose, and so much to the point where they don't even have the same name, is really kind of special. We're afraid to do that in America. We do it with Shakespeare, and we do it with, like, classic horror like Frankenstein. Right. But we're like, it's Shakespeare in a high school, and it's like, that's neat, but I like when we can have someone who says, I've got a way to tell this story. It's not going to be like the book.
I agree. And there's some things that, you know, he likes to hold on to the uneasiness of things. Mm-hmm. So, and right, if you took out all the awkwardness of the movie, it could have been an Academy Award nomination. But Park likes to work with his style where things are uncomfortable to digest and watch. Yeah. Especially torture scenes and the long duration of a sex scene that's damn near teetering on X-rated.
But you know, it's funny when you say that he likes to force his audience to do horrible things while watching. Like, he likes to, he really, like, put you in this terrible position. I read an interesting tale because of the sex scenes for some of these performers. This was their first nude scene in a film. Some of them it's their first film. And what I really thought was interesting was his incredible respect on set. I read a little story about how he actually had a remote control camera for the sex scenes, and he got everyone off the set except for one female boom operator, so that way he could have things as comfortable as they possibly could be. It's just kind of that interesting duality of, like, a really respectful, comfortable director who can give us something really, really unsettling.
Yes.
And how it kind of plays into is, like, where you talk about horror writers and horror directors being some of the funniest or most, like, welcoming people.
Right.
Because they're able to channel all that horror out, but they're still able to be good, engaging people who have respect for other people. So it's kind of funny that, you know, especially back in the 80s, like, we thought horror was, like, going to be the end of our children. So many people that are alive today now doing horror are some of the nicest people you'll ever meet. You know?
Because I heard, right, because we all know John Carpenter likes to crack jokes and almost be a stand-up comedian on set.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think it's interesting that Park Chan-wook is such a, like, he goes almost to the nth degree to respect his actors and to make sure that they're comfortable on set when they're doing uncomfortable things. Yeah. And then he's able to give us this movie. You know?
Well, it's a contradiction of delicate care of your film with costuming and characters and how they look, and then there's scenes where, like, I'm not comfortable watching this, which is a staple of his style. Is he takes a lot of time, but also he knows film. Like I said, even though there's this reading of stories that's uncomfortable, but it's magnificently shot.
Yeah, and it's again like when you can make something that just visibly, like, just talking purely about the visible shot that takes place there, if you muted it and didn't know that she was reading something gross, it's shot beautifully, and it juxtaposes that beauty of what you're seeing on film to what's taking place on screen and what's actually happening to the characters. That's kind of that funny element of, like, again, we're going to subvert what you're looking at. You're looking at something so gorgeous, so lovely. Oh, it's porn. And it's, you know, do whatever, you know, readings you need to do, but it's one of those weird things that, like, it's a disturbing scene because it's these gross older men staring at this young woman as she reads porn, but it's shot gorgeously.
And then the other thing is it's child abuse. It shows child abuse, long digestive component of child abuse.
That's the toughest part about part two. It's more so than anything else is realizing that someone's been put through this for their entire life.
Yeah.
Where you can understand why she would even be perceived as naive by everyone around her, you know?
Yeah. So, like I said, it's a component of something very unforgettable and something really memorable. So this movie has two things that I really guard. It's really, I will never forget, I've seen this movie. Nope. And there's some great stuff in it that's really memorable scenes into it. I mean, I'm not talking about the actions, but the really shot, really, really fantastic. And it's just one of those things that Park, not afraid to play safe.
Yep.
If say we can do this and be safe, I will put it in the movie. But how we're going to make it, we'll play safe and make sure everybody's...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the special kind of care that you got to respect that, you know? Because films can be horrible places to work on if you've got horrible people behind the camera. or they could be really comfortable places where people can have fun even though they're making the not fun stuff.
Right. Yes.
Like what you have, and I think that's important to point out.
I also mentioned Kyle said this is his first ever seen a first film of Park Chan-wook's films, and he enjoyed it. And I also said I've seen enough. I've seen all three. I've seen Old Boy and Sympathy, Lady Vengeance, and Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, so I know what I was getting into, and I even enjoyed it as well.
Yep.
So it's one of those like you don't know what you're getting into, but you enjoy it. Almost like Wes Anderson. You don't know what you're getting into, but you kind of enjoy it. But sometimes you know a Wes Anderson film that you know what you're getting into as well.
Yeah, and even though the content shifts, it's still kind of that's them. It's again like that, back to that auteur definition where it's like you can tell the director by the work. The film I don't think is perfect. I don't think it's not. It's while it is shot well, I do think the editing is a little long in the tooth.
You could cut 10 minutes out of this movie.
Yeah, we could get it down to a more comfortable, nearer to 2 hours mark.
Yeah.
Because it does wear, like I said, not just the content of part 2, but we are retreading the same water, so it can be.
That's another staple. He loves to wear you down when watching your movies. If you watch Old Boy, you're like, oh my god, I'm exhausted.
So there's that. I think the production design is great, but I think like that editing could be chopped down a little bit, and I do think that the writing, as far as the betrayals, makes you question who are we trusting and who are we betraying, because it's happened so often. But in all of these kinds of movies where like there's multiple twists happening with the characters trusting one another and being, rewarded with pain, I don't know if I bought the final placement of our figurine.
You know what they need to do? They need to hire David Mamet to make how you things are going to go. David Mamet loves those kind of stories of what the story's about. He can do it really.
He'll spool it and then he'll unspool it. Like he'll figure out where he needs to lead and he'll place the pieces. I think that the pieces mostly connect well in leading us where we want to go, or where we don't expect to go. But then it kind of ends on a place where you're there, and it's. I don't know if I'm satisfied by where it left us at the end of the film.
So, have you seen The Handmaiden or any other of Park Chan-wook's films?
Yep. Hey, Nick, is there a place I can go if I've seen another Park Chan-wook film that I want us to talk about on the show?
Where?
You can go on the Patreon. That link is right down there. Nick talked about it at the beginning of the episode. Check it out. Yeah. And you can get tiers as low as $1, but some of the tiers there also will give you shout-outs. They'll give you access to Picks with Kyle and Nick, our monthly show, where we just give you some great recommendations of the things that are our favorites.
My passwords to all my accounts.
I want to join. But you can also get that, and you can tell us about the films that you want to talk about. If you love Park Chan-wook and you want us to talk more of his films, that's a great place to do so. Go down to the Patreon. If you hate Park Chan-wook and you want us to never talk about their films,
there's some things you can hate about.
Give us other options to work with by joining that Patreon down below in the description. You can also subscribe, comment below, and share the video. It gets us a little bit more coverage, which gives us the ability to give you more content in the long run. And that's our kind of goal is to keep on talking movies 24/7.
Yeah. So
I'm Nick, or I'm not Nick.
Yeah, you are.
Oh, maybe I'm Kyle from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and thanks for watching. We'll catch you again.
There you go.